Hey guys, Jalen here doing a dual commentary for Pros and Cons, episode 4 on Jackknife with CJ. Say what's up, man.
What's good? This is Jay. See me on the channel. I'm pretty good, but
If you guys aren't
trying to take
aware,
my
CJ
channel
is,
to
of
the next
course,
level. How
one.
about Connor?
Yeah. So we've got CJ here. If you guys don't know, he's definitely one of the better players here with us on TVI. If you, I mean, seriously, you probably don't see his face a lot, of course, like lots of us, but you should have seen him a couple of times. Locals vlogs, the other videos. You've seen him around. Um,
Yeah,
but
you
I
seen me
needed his
around.
help with this jackknife video because he knows this. This was his first buddy fight deck, and he still
Yeah,
got it now.
it's pretty bad, but we're recovering. We are definitely recovering.
Yeah, EBO2 man, EBO2 definitely gonna get more
EBO2
jackknife
cuts,
support.
EBO2 cuts, and alright. So let's kick it off. I'll start off with some pros, and my man Jalen will take it away with some cons. You know. Alright, so let's start. So a good pro for the deck is the jackknife form utilities, such as getting shields back from bystand. You can penetrate with dispersal, and you can pop monsters with thunderstorm and potentially get yourself to the point where you can roam on. And then aggressor is just good to beat through big monsters, and yeah, some good utility. Any form for any time you need it. That's how the deck should be played.
Huh? Really good pro the deck has. But along with those forms, they give themselves a flaw by having the trouble with gauge because Jackknife Dragon is primarily, of course, the card that gets you the forms from your deck. But just to bring on Jackknife Dragon, you have the call cost of his pay 1 gauge, and then to use his effect, you have to pay 2 gauge along with that. Um, of course, it's great to call out things from the deck. That's what the deck's really good at. Good at thinning out your deck by using Jackknife Dragon's effect, and so you don't have to dead draw the forms. But anyway, like that, the deck just has the problem when you have to use so much gauge. You have to like just to usually bring out a form, you have to cost 2 or 3 gauge to use these primarily the dragons. So it's kind of hard because without Dragonic Charge or Dragon Knuckle or Quixote, it's kind of hard for you to keep up gauge, so you kind of have to play those cards in the deck, which doesn't leave much space for you to play other things.
Yeah, it really takes away from like all the creativity that you can throw in. But I mean, throwing in Dragon Knight, Armor Knight deck, Armor Dragon deck is definitely creativity. But alright, alright. So let's kick it off with the next pro. You would like to see. So anyway, I said you would like to add you to. Alright, so we got an aggressive playstyle, and that's what Jackknife really sports, especially with dispersal, because you can penetrate, and that's an easy 3 crit. You can lead up a full board with pretty much 3-3-2 critical coming at your opponent, and you're playing the right weapon, like let's say Drago Breach, which is a pretty good weapon for the deck. Or you could play Drago Brave, which discards the dead forms of Jackknife, which you really don't need in hand. And I think that really makes up for dead forms, but it really doesn't give it that edge in use because it's still a minus, it's still neck one, and you pay gauge. And with Breach, you pay life, which is kind of bad because you might need that life for your Thunderstorm. But all in all, I think it's pretty good. It gives you a nice solid field presence, nice aggressive playstyle, and really supports the deck.
Really great there. Another thing hard about the deck, like I said about the gauge heaviness, but with the gauge heaviness, it makes it hard to play impacts. Impacts,
Yeah,
the primarily good ones of Dragon World, such as the only usable playable ones like Dragonic Punisher, maybe, but not really in this deck, and Gargantua. These require 4 gauge. The other conditions aren't hard to meet, such as Gargantua's not neither of you having a center and them being at 4 less life. That's pretty much not hard for most dragon decks, but the only problem is the 4 gauge because the gauge is usually used for your jackknife forms and bringing them out, and maybe a few other monsters you might be playing in there. But like the deck still has its good stuff about it because of course it doesn't really primarily force itself to play an impact like other armor dragons. But anyway, CJ.
yeah. just like what Jalen said, yeah, it's hard to close out the game. But what they do have, because they don't play Punisher, you do or you don't in your Jackknife build, is you can have a good defense, and that can mean loading up your center instead of having your um three attack formation, and you can put in stuff like Bronze Shield or the Thunder Knight's Brass Shield. If you're just feeling, you're just feeling like you want a blue. Anyway, so yeah, you can play some of those, and then you can put one good thing about bystand is you can put him in the center. You can protect your center, get you back any shield you want, and the shields can come back and be reused. One to get you life, one to get you gauge, one to stop penetrate. And it's really good because it just gives you that utility.
Really great. And we've kind of stated it before, but it's still a con deck, and we haven't really truly addressed it. The dead drawing of the Jackknife forms. Now, if people aren't familiar with this deck, you can dead draw these Jackknife forms because you can only call them on top of a Jackknife, and you have to pay a gauge, unlike Bystand, who costs you 2 gauge to call them from the hand. So it's kind of hard for the deck when you draw the forms without Jackknife Dragon to really function. So you really need. So that's why it's always good to play other size twos, so you don't get stuck with the other forms or something like that. So the
Yeah,
jackknife forms are great and all, but mostly you would rather get them from the deck, and it's sometimes not bad when you just go like call a jackknife dragon, and then you pay 1 gauge for that, then you pay 1 gauge to call a form from your hand on top of it. But even if that does cost you less gauge to get from the deck, 1 less gauge, but it still gets you 2 cards out of your hand, which your opponent now knows you don't. You have less cards in your hand, so your opponents can kind of think out like, oh, maybe he doesn't have a shield or something. I don't know. But it's just the jackknife forms could be cloggy at moments, depending on how many you play, and then it doesn't even matter if they're cloggy. Just drawing them without the jackknife dragon is pretty bad.
yeah, not having that jackknife dragon means everything in your hand that's the jackknife form is pretty much useless. So yeah, that's really bad con of the deck. And then, but another good thing about the deck is that we have something called Thunderstorm. He's a really good form because he cripples the walls of other decks. And basically, what you can do is you pay 2 life and you pop any monster as long as Thunderstorm is in the right or the left. You can only use the ability when you're in the right or the left, which is why I addressed that. Anyway, so yeah, it's a pretty good card. You can pop Seeger. You can pop anything that's really just a threat for you to get rid of in general that has Soul Guard, you know. And popping Seeger, you can finish the game like that. You can just pop, throw down your dispersal and go for game. Like it's just easy. But yeah, it's these are some really good combos from the deck, and they can help it stand up to other decks that really have really good potential in defense. So you can break through, maybe get an easy win.
Yeah. Another thing, it's got the same flaw as I think regular armor dragons. There's no draw power, even with the added card of Drago Genius that came out in BTO3. There's no draw power outside of being at low life. This deck can still use that to its advantage because of the card known as, well, Jackknife Thunderstorm, that you pay 2 life for his ability, so you can get yourself low enough so you can use these cards. But even so, you can only activate one of them per turn. Um, Grimoire requires you to discard your hand. You don't have to have a hand, but I'm just saying you have to discard your entire hand, then draw 3, and then Drago Genius can get you just straight 2 cards. So that's pretty good if you want to play Drago Genius over Grimoire, maybe, I don't know, but um, you can still use these cards to your advantage, but it's still the problem of being at low life to just be able to even get more cards to your hand, because that's the problem with Dragon World in general. There's just not easy ways to get more cards in your hand.
Yeah, and one bad thing about Drago Genius that really isn't stressed upon is that it's 2 gauge instead of one, which is for the generic version, which is in what's it called? Danger World, which is only
Mm-hmm.
1 gauge to draw two, but this time it's 2 gauge. I think that's a balancing reason, but that's like in Grimoire, just for free, just draw three, but you have to discard your entire hand. But yeah, another thing that we can stress upon is lots of high attacking monsters. We got Aggressor. Aggressor can take on regular Caesar, Spartan. Those are threats, and it can knock them out with one attack, and then you can use the rest of the link attack for just for the rest of it or any other monster that's on the board. Anything that has a high defensive potential, like 8,000 or less can be hit by aggressor and other cards that are played in the deck, which is really really decent for this deck. It's really really necessary. Like they have one card that's what was it? It was a no no it was a 3 3 6 something like that. Or you can reverse that. The attack is 6 obviously, but
Yeah.
it's really good in the deck because it can beat down on other monsters. And it's a size 2, so you can't play Jackknife obviously with it. But I mean, then again, it's no gauge cost. You just call it, pop it, just attack, attack, and you're good from there.
And I think, and covering the last flaw of the deck, it's hard to close out the games. Now, this is kind of similar to the previous flaw of not being able to play impacts, but it kind of plays a big role because of like the previous con I just mentioned. But it's just because it's hard to close out games because Dragon World before, people always fear Gargantua. They're like, oh, I got to make sure I have a center. I got to make like people have to preemptively do things in a game because they're playing against Dragon World, but that's not what you have to do against this deck because it does not play an impact, or if you do, then it's probably not going to be live or anything, maybe most of the time. But anyway, it's just because it's hard to close out games because you can't use impacts, so then your opponent could most likely live in situations where Gargantua would have ended the game, and then people won't fear the deck as much because it doesn't have the same kill potential as like maybe generic armor dragons or any other variant of dragon that could use
Yeah, Thunder
Gargantua.
Knights, they have a really easy way of getting gauge.
Holy shit, Thunder Formation.
Yeah, Thunder Formation.
Card is so good. But outside of that, there's not really much other cons to this deck, so I'll let CJ take it away with the rest of the pros.
Yeah, the rest of the pros are what I've said upon shield recycling, getting back with bystand. It's really good because you can get back shields, like your blue dragon shield, use again, get more gauge. That's really good. That'll really help out the deck. Or life if you're gonna plan on using thunderstorm more and more and more. And then white if you know you're gonna be up against a danger world or anything that can penetrate you. And then another good pro, the last pro we got here is a reliable double penetrate, which can be comboed with your all pike dragon if you decide to play it in your dragon deck, or and dispersal. Now, if you do get it off, instead of being the usual 4 crit penetrate that you guys consistently put out with Danger World, you can get 5 crit penetrate, which is even better. So you can close out a game. If there are 5 life or left, and they have a monster in the center, and then you're playing against Danger World, or actually you play any world. They can't stop it because it's a link attack, so they automatically lose the game. I'm a Katana. We're not gonna talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Katana World has some
it's
crazy.
because most cards, I mean, most decks don't have the potential to do anything where monsters in center. I mean, the only things that can really respond are some specific nullifiers or anything like that. Katana World can only deal with it with Snake Gaze. Seeger can only deal with it with the nullifier, and um, the last thing
All
would
the
be
other nullifiers don't work. You have a monster in the center and it's a link attack, it won't work. Like the nullifiers for Magic and Katana, they won't work. And the
yeah,
nullifiers for
Salmon
Snake
Shield does not
and
work.
Dragon.
There's like plenty of decks that just don't like cannot stop dome penetration. So the fact that Jackknife now has a good access to it is just really great for the deck.
Yeah, if you close out games,
So what I say
something.
for the final verdict of this deck is definitely this deck is just underrated and overshadowed by generic armor dragons. Honestly, with this new EBO2 set coming out in September, I honestly believe that Jackknife hopefully will get what they need to become a higher deck up in the tier because it's got really great potential. It's got high damage output, high attacking monsters. The only problem is the gauge heaviness and the fact that you will need cards that get you gauge get you plenty of gauge in order to do most of your plays. But even so, it's not hard to get off these effects. You just have to deal damage like with El Quixote and Dragon Knuckle, and then you can just play Dragonic Charge, which just get you a 2 free gauge. But anyway, the final verdict of this deck is it's got a great matchup against lots of decks. It has the same benefits of generic Armordragon, but even better things to go along with it. So anything you want to say?
Deck has really good utility. And hopefully, with the next support, if we get a lot of support instead of just one new form, being bushy. if we get some support that'll help out the deck, like the core problems of the deck, then we can really see a new competitive rest with this Jackknife deck instead of just it on the sidelines and generic dragons just taking everything, like taking everything sold. Like there's nothing like it.
Uh, but anyway, thank you, CJ, for helping me so much with this. I really appreciate it,
No
man.
problem, man. Thank you.
But anyway, guys, hope you guys like this video and subscribe to Team Branding Infinity for more videos like this from all of us. And definitely leave down in the comment section below what you want to see on next episode, episode 5. So
Yeah, and don't leave repeats.
don't leave repeats, because I did get that one Seeger comment. It's like, can you do Seeger? It's like, there's a playlist. There's a playlist. I literally put a playlist of all the episodes. Episode 1. Just right there. Anyway, see you guys later. Jalen and CJ going out.